If you're a newer NASCAR fan or a younger NASCAR fan, you're probably not familiar with what's about to happen in this frozen frame right here. Well, the guy in the yellow and black car, that's Robby Gordon, and he's the race leader. The guy in the white car is rookie driver Kevin Harvick. He's a lap down but has fresher tires and is way faster than the leader. What's about to happen here is the perfect embodiment of Robby Gordon's career. A tenacious competitor just unwilling to listen to logic or reason, all for our benefit as the viewer. Motorsport is all about entertainment, and holy did Robby Gordon entertain us. This represents a rebirth for Robby. He's about to be back full-time in NASCAR and carve out another 11 years as a driver and eventually a team owner. But it all hinged on this 2001 race at Sonoma. This is Robby Gordon's turning point. So I'll preface this by saying that I am probably the biggest Robby Gordon fan on planet Earth. I'm 100% completely biased in all matters that pertain to him. He's the best race car driver of all time. You're never going to convince me otherwise. Guy's won in everything he's ever been in. Off-road trucks, IndyCar, NASCAR, you name it, the guy has stepped in it and won. But before we get to that 2001 Sonoma race, where did Robby Gordon's career begin? So Robby Gordon grew up in the world of off-road racing. As early as age 15 and 16, he was racing in the Mickey Thompson Stadium Series with Ivan Stewart as his teammate. He won 5 SCORE International Championships, 2 Mickey Thompson Stadium Series titles. He also won the Baja 500 in 1989 and 1990. So essentially, we've just established that he was a straight absolute baller when it came to off-road racing. He transitioned to sports cars in the early 90s, racing in IMSA and Trans Am as part of Roush Racing's program. He was part of Roush's dominant runs as both the 24 Hours of Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring, and won those marquee races a combined 7 times in class. In 1992, he jumped to IndyCar, where he'd spend the next 5 seasons. He won twice during his time in IndyCar, both in 1995, once at Phoenix and once on the street course at Detroit. But following the 1996 season, he decided that IndyCar was, well, a little too dangerous for him, and decided to move on and looked to NASCAR as the next step of his career. Gordon signed a deal with Sabco to drive the number 40 Coors Light car in 1997, but this was not his first experience in stock cars. He'd been racing in stock cars all throughout the 1990s. In 1991, he drove in the Daytona 500 for Junie Donlevy in an amazing car sponsored by Publix. Pub subs are delicious. He also had several other one-off starts in the early 90s, including driving the legendary number 28 Haviland car for Robert Yates Racing after the untimely death of Davey Allison. But Robby actually said the main reason he wanted to go to NASCAR is because he had competed in IROC in 1996 and ran incredibly well. I believe he had 3 second-place finishes that season and pushed Dale Earnhardt to the win at the Daytona race. Guess he figured if he could run well in a stock car style car in IROC, he'd run well in NASCAR. Didn't quite go that way though. So his 1997 campaign in NASCAR was quite lackluster. He did win a pole at Atlanta in just the 4th race of the season, but he ended up missing quite a few races due to injuries sustained in that year's Indy 500. He would get a top 5 finish at Watkins Glen, but was released by the team before the end of the season and returned back to IndyCar. He spent 1998 and 1999 racing in kart as part of Toyota's new program. He returned to NASCAR full-time in the year 2000 with his own team in partnership with John Menard. Yes, the Menards guy. In fact, this was one of the first times Menards was ever involved in NASCAR. Robby Gordon, Menards pioneer. But he had another bad year and had just a couple of top 10s and failed to qualify for several races. So really wasn't looking like there was much of a future in NASCAR. But flash forward to 2001. Gordon signs a deal to race for Morgan McClure Motorsports, the legendary team with the number 4 Kodak car. Iconic, sleek, yellow. He had a great car in the Daytona 500 and looked like he had a chance to win the race before he got caught up in the big one in the backstretch. Tony Stewart did a little flippity flip and that took out a bunch of cars. After 4 more races, he was let go by Morgan McClure because I guess it just wasn't really working out. He had a best finish of 20th at Atlanta. Naturally, in those days, after getting fired, he was replaced with Kevin LePage. It was the circle of life. You got fired, Kevin LePage replaced you. It's just how things went back then. So Robby's out of a ride, and now it looks like his NASCAR career is over. What does he do? Does he go back to open wheel for a third time? Does he go to sports cars? Does he go back to off-road? Or does he just, take his money and just like go live on a lake somewhere and, have a couple golden retrievers and just like live a quiet, peaceful life? So flash forward about 10 weeks to Sonoma 2001, which is where we started this video. But how did we get here? Why is he in this car and why is he in the lead and how did we get here? Well, let's explain. Ultra Motorsports was a powerhouse truck series team dating all the way back to the inaugural season in 1995. They had great drivers like Mike Bliss and Mike Wallace, contended for a lot of wins. Didn't win a championship up to that point, but were a very serviceable truck team. They had a lot of money from Ford and then later Dodge. They were a very, very successful team. In 2001, they decided to launch a full-time Cup Series campaign and move their truck series driver Mike Wallace up to the ride. He had a good run at Daytona, had a top 10, had a couple other top 10s, but other than that, he was doing not so great. Had a lot of DNFs, things weren't working out. So they started replacing him for certain races with guys like Ted Musgrave, and when they got to Sonoma, they decided to go with our man, Robby Gordon. Now this is actually somewhat of a controversial decision because if you look at Mike Wallace's career statistics in the truck series on road courses, like, don't sleep on Mike Wallace at a road course. Like, he's actually pretty good, but Robby Gordon's great. Robby qualified the car 7th, ran a great race, team worked great strategy, got him in position to win the race late, but that was until Kevin Harvick, who was on fresher tires, started to fight with him to get his lap back. Now, logic would dictate that you, as the leader, in perfect position to win the race and save your career, would simply move over, let Kevin Harvick go by you, have his lap back, because he is literally a lap down and no threat to you whatsoever. But, folks, as we previously mentioned, Robby Gordon doesn't do logic and reason, because Robby Gordon is a racer. He ain't getting passed by nobody. He doesn't care if you're 7 laps down, 100 laps down, whatever the scenario is. He is not letting you pass him, and that's just the way it's gonna be. Even with his crew screaming at him over the radio, "Robby, we worked the deal, just let him by, we're gonna win this race." Robby continues to race him, and he takes a bad line into a corner, which lets Tony Stewart squeak by him, and well, Tony leads the last 10 laps of the race and gets to drive his car into victory lane. So Robby didn't win in what was probably his best opportunity to ever do so, but all was not lost. Robby's performance in that race gave him a second chance at NASCAR. Later that season, he was hired by Richard Childress to fill in for an injured Mike Skinner, and he was again in position to win on the other road course at Watkins Glen before NBC's onboard camera burst into flames, stealing the win away from him. They had to retire from the race, and it's widely believed that they would have at least had a pretty good shot of winning that race. In the final race of the season, Robby shocked the world by bumping Jeff Gordon out of the way right near the end of the race and stealing the victory at New Hampshire. It was shocking because literally no one ever thought Robby Gordon would win on an oval. Robby then carved out another 11 years in NASCAR as a driver for RCR and later as a driver for his own team. He'd win another 2 Cup races and entertain us with his on and off track antics for years. Say what you want about the guy, but if you ask anyone that raced against him, they'll say that he could wheel a car. He has won in every type of car he's ever stepped into. But had Mike Wallace not underperformed in the 7 car, Robby never gets that opportunity to impress at Sonoma and effectively save his career. The deeper you dive on scenarios like this, the more you realize how important each individual event in a driver's career is to get them to where they ended up. It's kind of like the butterfly effect, but racing. Does that analogy make sense? I'm trying to think of cool analogies to end these things with. Oh yeah, now Robby Gordon spends his time driving trucks through the sky. Thanks for watching episode 2 of Turning Point. If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, just click on that box right there. It'll take you to episode 1, or don't, because we believe in freedom of choice on this channel.